Hello everyone, I'm Jack Fisher and welcome to my world. And whenever I speculate on anything, especially superhero comics, I do so with a number of caveats. For one, I freely acknowledge that I have no inside information or sources. I'm just a lifelong comic book fan with a YouTube channel. But in some instances, I speculate with the sincere hope that I'm wrong. I know that sounds like a byproduct of being jaded and cynical, but I've been reading comics for most of my life. I have followed the rise, fall, and sudden resurgence of many series, writers, characters, and gimmicks. I'm now at a point in my life where I can see the signs of when something is about to go very wrong in a comic book. It's not always accurate, but over the years, that gut feeling has had more hits than misses. And this brings me to the recently revamped Ultimate Universe, a story I've been following closely ever since it was announced. I hope I've made clear by now that I want this new Ultimate Universe to succeed. I think it would be great for Marvel and the comic book industry as a whole. But that gut feeling I just mentioned, well, it's starting to gnaw at me again, and it has to do with Ultimate X-Men. Now, as of the making of this video, the first issue of Ultimate X-Men hasn't been released. And we don't know much about the overarching plan for this series, other than it will be written and drawn by Peach Momoko. We also know from the events of Ultimate Invasion that mutants do exist in this new universe. Characters like Magik, Colossus, and Omega Red did show up in multiple issues. But even with mutants being present, there was no indication that the X-Men exist in this universe. We can only surmise that, just as he did with Spider-Man and the Avengers, the Maker ensured that they never formed. That means if and when the X-Men do form in this new Ultimate Universe, they will be considerably different. And that's already being used as a selling point. The official solicitation for Ultimate X-Men #1 says it outright. Meet Armor, Maelstrom, and a whole group of new Ultimate X-Men, the likes of which you've never seen before. And sure, this version of Ultimate X-Men is bound to be different in so many ways, but it's the extent of that difference that could derail this whole series. And I'll even go so far as to say that if this one Ultimate series fails, then that might undermine this entire new Ultimate Universe as a whole. That may sound like hyperbole mixed with paranoia, as well as the musings of a lifelong X-Men fan who endured the Chuck Austin era, but unlike other kinds of pessimistic speculation, there is a precedent for this. As I already noted in my Rebooting Ultimate Marvel series, this sort of thing is exactly what derailed the previous Ultimate Universe, and there was no series that manifested that problem more than Ultimate X-Men. While I don't care to recount all the ways that things went horribly off the rail, I'll just note that by the end of the previous Ultimate Universe, there really were no X-Men. Pretty much every major X-Men character, including those who were present when Ultimate Marvel first began, they were all gone, having been killed off or rendered completely unrecognizable. There was no Xavier Institute, no X-Jet, no iconic costumes, no Danger Room, nothing of the sort. There was just Kitty Pryde, Storm, Iceman, and a handful of other replacement characters, and their stories just revolved around surviving in a world that had been completely destroyed. And there was absolutely no hope of things ever getting better beyond a certain point. And aside from those stories being bleak, boring, and uninteresting, there was also one critical, detrimental difference for the X-Men in this universe. You see, in the former Ultimate Universe, mutants were not natural in that they were an evolutionary offshoot of Homo sapiens. They were just the descendants of failed super soldier experiments during World War II. And by definition, that means they weren't mutants. They were just Inhumans without the fancy magic cloud. And once that difference was established, the entire concept of X-Men fell apart. Because trying to have the X-Men without mutants is like trying to build a water park without any water. Because the narrative, the themes, and the characters that make the X-Men such an iconic franchise, being born a certain way, being hated and feared by society as a whole, it just does not work if they're failed science experiments. Now, none of this is to say that Peach Momoko's vision for Ultimate X-Men will fail, but it's a familiar concern that we've seen play out before. If the X-Men are too different in terms of characters, plots, themes, and aesthetics, then at some point, they're just going to cease being the X-Men. They'll be just another team of superpowered characters. And to call them X-Men would be akin to calling a house cat an elephant. I'm sorry if that came off as a bit of a rant, but I want to articulate these concerns because based on what has been teased thus far about Ultimate X-Men, this series is being touted for how different it is, and not just because of Peach Momoko's unique art style. We already knew it wouldn't initially focus on Charles Xavier, Wolverine, Storm, or any other well-known X-Men characters. Instead, it's going to focus on Hisako Isiki. And while she is an established X-Men character who has been around since the early 2000s, she's relatively unknown outside those who know X-Men lore intimately. And expecting her to carry the entire X-Men wing of this new Ultimate Universe is bold, but risky. I certainly think it could work, and I honestly hope it does work. If Hisako could do for Ultimate X-Men what Jubilee did for the 90s X-Men cartoon, then that would go a long way towards making this series genuinely compelling. But there's one other complicating factor that adds to my concern, and that is Maystorm. Now, who is Maystorm? Well, she's also mentioned in the solicit for Ultimate X-Men #1, but unlike Hisako, she is not an established X-Men character. She's an entirely original character created by Momoko herself. Initially, she was just a character for Marvel's new Champion variant covers, and that was basically a contest that Marvel gave its top artists, tasking them with creating an original character who could serve as a sidekick to another major Marvel character. And Maystorm was created by Momoko to be Storm's sidekick. Except now, she's set to play a major role in Ultimate X-Men. We don't know what that role will be. Maybe she'll be a rival for Hisako. Maybe she'll be a friend. Maybe she'll become an enemy. There's certainly some potential there, but at the same time, there's also some baggage. More so than for most new characters. Because with Ultimate Marvel, and especially with Ultimate X-Men, the track record for entirely original characters is not great. Some like to cite Miles Morales, but he is the exception and not the norm. Plenty of other Ultimate fans will cite someone like Geldof as the epitome of dumb, forgettable original characters from the former Ultimate Universe. However, at least for Ultimate X-Men, it got a lot worse than that. Remember, the former Ultimate Universe killed off a lot of prominent X-Men, and in their absence, multiple writers tried to fill the void with new original characters, none of which were the least bit memorable. I promise you, very few people got excited to follow the stories of Jimmy Hudson, Derek Morgan, Mock Tube, or Teddy Allen. They were all just boring, uninteresting replacement characters trying to fill the shoes of those who had helped make Ultimate great to begin with. And it did not work, not in the slightest. Thankfully, Maelstrom won't be arriving in those circumstances, but she's still an original character created by Momoko herself, and make no mistake, there will be a temptation to have her steal the show in Ultimate X-Men. I know this because I myself have written a lot of terrible fanfiction over the years. And trust me, it is very common for writers to make their original characters too perfect. I'm tempted to call them Mary Sues, but I know that term evokes a lot of negative sentiments these days. Hopefully, Peach Momoko will be able to resist that temptation. I also hope she finds a way to make Ultimate X-Men #1 different for all the right reasons. I would love nothing more than for her to succeed in creating a compelling new vision for the X-Men in this new Ultimate Universe. I'm just laying out my concerns in this video, and I promise they're genuine. I really do not want to see Ultimate X-Men falter, not just because I'm a diehard X-Men fan, but because its failure could completely derail this new Ultimate Universe entirely. Again, that's not hyperbole. That is a certainty. I know this as well as anyone who has ever followed Marvel's history with alternate universes. From the Spider-Girl series by Tom DeFalco to the Renew Your Vows universe that spun out of Secret Wars, the margin for error for these alternate series is very small. The first iteration of the Ultimate Universe lasted as long as it did because those first round of Ultimate comics were both critically and commercially successful. But over time, the only Ultimate title that regularly did well was Ultimate Spider-Man. Once both Ultimate X-Men and the Ultimate started to falter, the entire imprint became doomed. The only reason it lasted as long as it did was because Brian Michael Bendis stayed on Ultimate Spider-Man until the bitter end. Like it or not, if even one of these new Ultimate titles fails, then that's going to affect the other books. It wouldn't matter how well received Ultimate Black Panther or Ultimate Spider-Man are. If there's a series like Ultimate X-Men dragging down the brand, then the imprint will not last. Again, I do not want this to happen. I genuinely hope that this video ages like milk. If Ultimate X-Men ends up succeeding, I'll happily proclaim I was wrong. But we probably won't know for sure until the first few issues of this series are out. And ultimately, I do hope everything pans out for the best, because I already saw one Ultimate Universe crash and burn in the worst possible way, and I would rather not see that happen again. Thanks for watching, everyone, and thanks for joining me in my world. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and until next time, take care and stay safe.